The sound ripped through the crisp autumn air of the town square, not a gunshot, but something just as startling. It was the crack of reinforced steel giving way, followed by a frantic, powerful scratching that could only mean one thing. Officer Miller's heart leaped into his throat. He spun around, his hand instinctively going to his hip, his eyes locking onto his K9 cruiser. The cage was empty. A deep, guttural bark echoed off the brick buildings, a sound of pure, unrestrained urgency. Chaos erupted. People who had been peacefully enjoying the Saturday farmers' market screamed and scattered, a wave of panic washing over the square. But Max, his prized German shepherd, his partner, wasn't running wild. He was moving with a terrifying purpose, a black and tan missile aimed directly at one person who remained impossibly still. An old man, his back ramrod straight, a faded military cap on his head, simply stood and watched the 100 pounds of focused canine fury hurtling toward him. He didn't even flinch. Why wasn't he running? Why was Max, the most disciplined dog on the force, acting like this? Nothing made sense. Stay till the end, because this incredible story of a runaway police dog and a stoic veteran will leave you speechless, questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and instinct. What happened next would leave everyone, especially his handler, stunned. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Officer Dave Miller felt his blood run cold. Max, no. Heel, he bellowed, his voice cracking with a mix of authority and sheer terror. The command was useless. It was as if a wall had come down between them, severing a bond forged over 3 years of grueling training and shared patrols. Max's ears were deaf to him. His eyes, usually so quick to seek out Miller's for guidance, were locked on the old man with an intensity that chilled Miller to the bone. The dog's powerful legs devoured the distance, kicking up grass and dirt. The crowd was a blur of panicked faces, parents grabbing their children, vendors ducking behind their stalls. But the target of this canine projectile, this elderly gentleman, remained a statue of calm amidst the storm. He stood near the town's central fountain, a gentle spray of water misting the air around him. He held a small paper bag of what looked like apples, his knuckles white, but his posture relaxed. He wasn't defiant. He wasn't foolish. He was waiting. He watched Max's approach not with fear, but with a strange, profound curiosity. It was as if he was seeing something no one else could. Miller was sprinting now, his lungs burning, his mind racing faster than his feet. His training screamed at him, neutralized the threat. But the threat was his partner, his friend, the dog who slept at the foot of his bed, the dog he trusted with his life. How could this be happening? Max skidded to a halt just a few feet from the man, his body coiled like a spring, muscles bunched and trembling. A low, rumbling growl vibrated in his chest, but it wasn't the sound of aggression Miller had been trained to identify. It was different. It was a sound of frustration, of desperation. The dog's hackles were raised. His tail was rigid, but his eyes. Miller was close enough to see them now. They weren't filled with rage. They were filled with a kind of pleading. He was trying to say something. The veteran, whose name Miller would later learn was Arthur, slowly lowered his gaze to meet the dog's. He didn't speak. He didn't make any sudden moves. He simply looked at Max, a silent conversation passing between two souls who understood a language beyond words. Arthur's face, etched with the lines of a long and difficult life, softened slightly. He saw past the bared teeth and the tense muscles. He saw the intelligence, the conflict, the overwhelming sense of duty radiating from the animal. "It's all right, son," Arthur said, his voice quiet but clear, not directed at Miller, but at the dog. "I see you." Miller finally reached them, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He positioned himself between Arthur and Max, his body a human shield, though he had no idea who he was protecting from whom. "Sir, don't move. Please, just stay calm," he panted, his eyes flicking between the unmoving veteran and the agitated dog. "Max, stand down." "Down." Max whined, a high-pitched, anxious sound. He completely ignored Miller. His focus was solely on Arthur. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, craning his neck around Miller's legs. The growl subsided, replaced by that insistent, desperate whine. He wasn't trying to attack. He was trying to get to him. What on earth was going on? The initial wave of adrenaline began to recede, replaced by a profound and unsettling confusion. Every protocol, every training manual page flipping through Miller's mind had no answer for this. AK-9 unit is an extension of the handler. An attack command is given. A release command is given. There is no in-between. There is no room for a dog to make its own tactical decisions. Yet here was Max, his perfectly trained, fiercely loyal partner, staging a one-dog mutiny in the middle of a public square, all for a reason that was locked away behind his intelligent brown eyes. The crowd, now at a safe distance, watched in hushed, fearful silence. They saw a dangerous animal, a handler who had lost control, and an old man in mortal danger. But Miller, standing in the heart of the triangle, was beginning to see something else entirely. He was seeing a puzzle, and he felt a terrifying certainty that he needed to solve it, and fast. Arthur's gaze lifted from the dog and met Miller's. There was no fear there, only a quiet, unnerving understanding. "Your dog is trying to tell you something, officer," he said calmly. "You should probably listen." Before Miller could process that statement, another police cruiser screeched to a halt at the edge of the square. Officer Peterson leaped out, his hand already on his service weapon. "Miller, what's the situation? Do you need me to put it down?" The words hit Miller like a physical blow. "Put him down? Max." The thought was inconceivable. "No. Stand back, Peterson. I have it under control," he yelled, though his trembling hands told a different story. The stakes had just been raised from a crisis to a potential tragedy. He had seconds to figure this out before someone made a decision he couldn't live with. He had to trust his dog. After years of demanding Max's absolute trust in him, it was time to return the favor. It was the hardest thing he had ever had to do. Miller took a deep breath, forcing himself to block out Peterson's tense presence and the fearful murmurs of the crowd. He needed to see what Arthur saw. He needed to understand what Max was trying to communicate. He looked at his partner, truly looked at him, not as a tool or a weapon, but as the intelligent being he knew him to be. Max wasn't looking at Arthur's face anymore. His snout was pointed lower, aimed at the center of the old veteran's chest. His nose twitched, sniffing the air with an intensity that was almost frantic. He whined again, a short, sharp yelp, and then he did something that made Miller's heart stop. Max took another step, nudged his head gently against Arthur's hand, and licked it. It wasn't a kiss. It was a test. A plea. This behavior was so far outside the realm of his training that it felt like watching a different dog entirely. Max had been trained for bite work, for tracking, for sniffing out contraband. He was a machine of precision and obedience. He wasn't trained for this empathy, this strange, gentle insistence. Miller remembered the day he first met Max, a gangly, overgrown puppy with paws too big for his body and eyes that held an old soul's wisdom. The bond had been instant. Through countless hours of training, they had learned to read each other's slightest cues. A flick of an ear, a shift in weight, a change in breathing. Miller had always been the leader, the one giving the commands. Now, the roles were reversed. Max was leading, and Miller was lost. He thought back to a training exercise months ago, a simulated search for a missing person in a collapsed building. The instructors had laid a clear scent trail leading to the left, but Max had stubbornly pulled to the right, whining and refusing to follow the path. Miller had corrected him, forcing him to follow the designated trail. They found the victim, a dummy, right where the instructors said it would be. Later, one of the instructors pulled him aside. "Your dog was pulling right," he'd said. "We laid a secondary scent trail over there, much fainter, from the clothes of a different person. He was picking up on something we didn't intend for him to find. His nose is 1 in a million, Miller." Don't ever forget that Miller had dismissed it as a fluke, a distraction. Now, the memory came rushing back with chilling clarity. What if Max had been right then, too? Meanwhile, Arthur hadn't moved a muscle. He let the big dog nudge and lick his hand, his own hand resting lightly on the dog's massive head. He felt a strange vibration pass from the dog into him, a low hum of pure energy. He also felt something else, a tightness in his own chest, a familiar pressure he'd been ignoring all morning. He'd chalked it up to the autumn chill, or maybe the 2 cups of strong coffee he'd had. He was a veteran. He was taught to push through discomfort, to ignore the body's complaints. It was just a little indigestion. But as Max pressed his wet nose insistently against his jacket, right over his heart, the tightness sharpened into a distinct, undeniable pain. It radiated up into his jaw. "Sir, are you all right?" Miller asked, his voice now laced with a new kind of concern. He saw the subtle shift in Arthur's expression, the slight wince, the beads of sweat forming on his brow despite the cool air. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to click into place, forming a picture he didn't want to see. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a threat. It was an alert. Max seemed to sense the change, too. His whining grew more urgent. He pushed his body fully against Arthur's legs, a living brace, as if he knew the old soldier's strength was about to fail him. He looked up at Miller, and this time, their eyes met. In that instant, the wall between them crumbled. Miller saw it all, the warning, the fear, the plea for help. "He's not okay," the look said. "Do something. Peterson." Miller roared, not taking his eyes off Arthur. "Call for a bus. Now. Possible cardiac arrest." The command shocked Peterson out of his aggressive stance. "What? Miller, are you sure? Just do it." As if on cue, Arthur's face went ashen. His eyes, which had been so clear and knowing just moments before, glazed over. The paper bag of apples slipped from his grasp, tumbling to the ground with a soft thud. His knees buckled. He wasn't falling. He was collapsing. But he didn't hit the ground. Max was there. The big dog had anticipated the fall, planting his feet and absorbing the veteran's weight, easing him gently to the pavement as Miller lunged forward to support his head. The crowd gasped, their fear instantly transforming into stunned comprehension. The monster was a savior. The runaway K-9 was a hero. Max didn't back away. He immediately laid down beside Arthur, pressing his warm, solid body against the old man's side. He licked his face, nudging his hand, whining softly as if to say, "Stay with me. Help is coming. Just hold on." He was a furry, four-legged paramedic, a guardian angel in a police-issue collar. Miller dropped to his knees on the other side of Arthur, his hands flying to check for a pulse. It was there, but it was thready and erratic. "Hang on, sir. Hang on, Arthur," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at Max, whose desperate eyes were still locked on the fading veteran. "Good boy, Max," he choked out. "Good boy. You did good." The wail of a siren grew closer, a welcome sound cutting through the stunned silence of the square. Paramedics rushed in, their professional calm a stark contrast to the emotional chaos of the last few minutes. As they worked on Arthur, hooking him up to monitors and administering oxygen, one of them looked at the dog still lying faithfully by his patient's side. "Did he get bit?" the paramedic asked Miller. Miller shook his head, a tear tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. "No," he said, his voice filled with awe. "No, he saved him. He knew. The dog knew this was going to happen." The paramedic paused, looking from the dog to the readings on his monitor. The EKG is showing a massive anterior STEMI, a classic widowmaker. The fact that he was already on the ground when it hit full force, instead of falling from a standing height, might have saved him from a serious secondary injury. And the dog's body heat, it's helping to prevent shock. He shook his head in disbelief. "I've heard stories about dogs sensing seizures or low blood sugar, but this is something else." As they carefully loaded Arthur onto a stretcher, Max tried to follow. He stood up, whining, his eyes fixed on the man he had refused to leave. Miller put a gentle hand on his fur. "It's okay, buddy," he whispered. "He's in good hands now." "You did your job." Max looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd broken out of the cruiser, his body relaxed. He leaned against Miller's leg, letting out a long, shaky sigh. The crisis was over. His duty was done. Officer Peterson walked over, his own face pale. He holstered his weapon, the click sounding deafeningly loud in the quiet aftermath. "Miller, I almost..." he stammered, unable to finish the sentence. "I know," Miller said, his hand never leaving Max's back. "I know." There was no blame in his voice, only a shared understanding of how close they had all come to an irreversible mistake. They had all seen a threat, a liability. Only Max had seen the truth. In the days that followed, the story of Max the hero dog spread like wildfire. The local news ran a segment on him. The police department, instead of reprimanding Miller for a loss of control, awarded both him and Max a special commendation for life-saving. The bent door of the K-9 cruiser became a badge of honor. But for Miller, the real reward wasn't the plaque or the praise. It was the renewed, unbreakable bond with his partner. He would never doubt him again. He had learned the most important lesson of his career. Sometimes, the deepest truths aren't found in a training manual, but in the instincts of a loyal heart. About a week later, Miller was finishing up some paperwork at the station when the front desk officer buzzed him. "Dave, you have a visitor." Miller walked out to the lobby, and his heart swelled. There, leaning on a cane, but looking remarkably well, was Arthur. He was wearing the same faded military cap. He smiled when he saw Miller, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I came to see my guardian angel," Arthur said, his voice a little weak, but steady. Miller grinned. "He's in the back. I think he'll be happy to see you." He led Arthur back to the K9 kennels. The moment Max caught Arthur's scent, he was on his feet, his tail wagging so hard his whole body wiggled. There was no growling this time, no frantic urgency, just pure, unadulterated joy. Miller opened the kennel door, and Max trotted right up to Arthur, pushing his head gently into the old man's hand. Arthur stroked the dog's big head, his eyes misty. "The doctors told me," Arthur began, his voice thick with emotion. "They said I had a ticking time bomb in my chest. They said whatever triggered the event, the stress of it happening right there, with paramedics less than a minute away, it was the only reason I survived." He looked from the dog to Miller. "I thought he was challenging me. An old soldier's pride, you know? I wasn't going to back down from a dog. But he wasn't challenging me. He was trying to save me. He knew," Miller said softly. "I don't know how, but he knew." Arthur knelt down, wincing a little, so he was eye level with the dog. Max licked his cheek, a gentle, comforting gesture. "In the service," Arthur said, his gaze distant for a moment, "you learn to trust the guy next to you with your life. You learn to read things in their eyes that words can't say. When I looked at your dog in that square, I saw a soldier. I saw duty. I saw honor." He looked up at Miller, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You have a once-in-a-lifetime partner there, officer. Don't you ever forget it." "I won't, sir," Miller promised, his own voice catching. "I never will." From that day on, something changed in the way Miller worked with Max. He still ran the drills, still enforced the commands, but he also learned to listen. He paid attention to the subtle cues, the moments of hesitation, the unexplained instincts. He learned that their partnership wasn't a dictatorship, it was a dialogue. And sometimes, the most important things were said without a single word. The story of Officer Miller, the veteran Arthur, and the heroic dog Max became a local legend, a powerful reminder that the bonds we share with animals can transcend our understanding. It's a story about how courage isn't always about running into danger, but sometimes it's about standing perfectly still and trusting what you see in another's eyes. It teaches us that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes they have 4 paws, a wet nose, and a heart big enough to sense a life in peril. What Max did that day was more than just an act of instinct. It was an act of profound love and loyalty, a testament to the incredible, mysterious connection between humans and the animals who choose to stand by our side. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. We're so grateful to have you as part of our community.